Zuffa Boxing isn't selling you one fighter. It's selling you the idea that violence is the product and endings are the proof. Their matchmaking rewards clash styles and forces conclusions. Puncher versus puncher, finisher versus fading name, prospect versus tough but hittable opponent. Ajagba versus Martin was the blueprint: steady pressure, rising danger, and a brutal finish. In a crowded boxing jungle, Zuffa just introduced another predator. The brutal science of Zuffa Boxing, Ajagba versus Martin breakdown. So, there was a Zuffa Boxing event last Saturday night. And Zuffa, for those that don't know, if you don't know, is the parent company of the UFC. Now, an important question, or a question that I would ask myself, is what is Zuffa Boxing trying to achieve? What are they bringing to the table? Now, from my understanding, they're trying to create a culture of exciting fights. So think of this. The onus is on building exciting fights or creating exciting fights as opposed to protected records. So essentially, with this transition from protected records to purely focusing on exciting fights, they're trying to bring a cultural shift in boxing. So we are going to speak about the Ajagba Martin fight, but let's talk a bit about this. Because the question is, how do we achieve that objective? And you can break this down into two elements, for want of a better word. Let's say 70% is matchmaking, and let's say 30% is the cultural shift. So with regards to matchmaking, this is easy. You have a puncher versus a puncher. That's likely to be exciting. A finisher versus an aging champion. Again, that's likely to have an element of excitement. Or a prospect versus a durable but very hittable opponent. When you matchmake within this context, you're likely to have exciting fights. And with this cultural shift, if you're exciting, you will get more fights. Think of this. If you lose in an exciting fight, there may still be big paydays available. However, if you win in a boring way, that type of fighting doesn't align with the brand, so you may not get more paychecks. So this is an interesting way to structure boxing. There are currently no knockout bonuses, which is peculiar because this is structured into the UFC infrastructure. And of course, Zuffa Boxing is a parent company to UFC. However, there are allegedly something called locker room bonuses, which is unofficial discretionary cash bonuses. And I'm assuming those cash bonuses will be predicated on winning spectacularly, getting a knockout, etc. Now, before we get into the fight, I want to make this reference. I noticed that the fight on YouTube, so the fight on the YouTube platform, is titled Full Event Zuffa Boxing 03. And this is interesting because you would think it would have been titled as the main event, Ajagba versus Charles Martin. Why is this important? It's important because the focus is on the platform, which is Zuffa Boxing, as opposed to having a focus on the fighters. My initial questions to this would be the following. How does that affect marketing and how does that affect sponsorship? But outside of that, there's an important point. The platform. The platform is the superstar as opposed to the fighters being the superstars. So the main event is Zuffa Boxing as opposed to the fighters. That's what I took from that title. This may not be a bad thing. It may not be a good thing, but it's definitely a different thing. Also, and this is really good, there's a great commentary team. They had a great commentary team, and I feel that this is essential. It's essential for boxing to have a great boxing broadcast. One of the recognizable voices, although all the voices were recognizable, but Andre Ward was on the panel. And of course, Andre Ward was a great fighter. He beat Kovalev, he beat Kessler, he beat Chad Dawson, etc. So he was a great addition to the team. Now, I always think to myself, like, what is the impact of bad commentary? That's a good question to ask yourself. What is the impact of having bad commentary? And from my perspective, and of course, people's perspectives are different, but bad commentary can really destroy a fight experience. So having a solid commentary team in place is essential. So before I discuss the fight, just some very quick context. Charles Martin famously lost his title to Anthony Joshua via a second round knockout. And Ajagba had a recent draw against Martin Bakole, who was at the time a feared heavyweight. So these names, Ajagba and Charles Martin, they're known in the heavyweight space. So let's talk about the fight. So round one, Charles Martin comes out southpaw. He is naturally a southpaw, and he's pouring with the right hand. He's throwing some hard jabs to the body. What I notice here is that there's some good feints from Martin, and there's some nice backhands as well. So, there's some feints, jabs to the body, and some counter backhands. Ajagba is coming forward, but the pressure, this is what I would call soft foot pressure. He's just kind of, getting familiar in there, not really putting on significant pressure. There's a nice double left from Martin, followed by some feints, and another good counter left from Martin. And Ajagba is not really throwing the jab, and he's missing with the backhand. So this is a really good opening round for Charles Martin. In round two, Martin is countering Ajagba's backhand with his backhand. So Ajagba starts throwing the right hand straight, but Martin is seeing the punches getting out of the way, and he's countering with his left. Martin's pouring jab it's kind of using it just to control the distance and measure the distance. And that's being effective up to this point. Martin is now starting to, because they've both been focusing mainly on the head, despite the jab to the body. But Martin is now throwing some hooks to the body at times, some clever body work, which is good. One of the problems here is that the jab from Ajagba is minimal. And Ajagba is responding to the feints. So again, the foot pressure is soft. He's not really putting up much pressure. However, at the end of the round, he's starting to edge a little bit closer. Now, a good body shot and a sequence of punches from Martin at the end of the round, again, clearly gave him the round. And for me, at the end of this round, I'm thinking to myself, Ajagba really needs to start introducing the left hand, whether it's a feint, whether it's a jab, or whether it's a left hook. So we're heading into round three, and clearly Charles Martin has taken the first two rounds. Now Martin, there's a subtle shift here. Martin is now throwing the right jab harder. So he's putting a bit more power on that jab, and he lands a nice combination. Ajagba, as stated previously, has not used his left hand, but he does fire a nice straight to the body, which is nice. Now Ajagba, and the commentary picked this up, he's just focusing on trying to get in range to land the right hand. Now Martin throws a nice combination, but Ajagba is still coming forward. So the main change here is that Martin is starting to throw a bit more power behind the jab, but Ajagba's foot pressure is now a bit more, he's putting on more foot pressure. Now Ajagba gets in range, misses with a left uppercut, but lands a straight right. And just like that, Charles Martin is on the floor. Now, Charles Martin is hurt, but bravely, he is actually trying to fight back. Yes, he's moving around, but he's trying to fight back. And, that's very brave. Ajagba is getting in range. He's taking his time. So the punches from Charles Martin are missing, and he's landing really hurtful punches. But Martin survives the round. You've got to give him credit. Now, this is the thing that I've taken from this round. Charles Martin clearly hits hard, but Ajagba has a different type of power. And now he has momentum, not only from the knockdown, but he's clearly hurt Martin in that round as well. So in round four, Martin is trying to re-establish the jab. A great right by Ajagba and a sequence of punches again puts Martin on the canvas. Now, Martin gets up. Again, he's very brave, but a counter right hand from Ajagba lands. And this is the difficulty here, because Ajagba, he's not just rushing in to walk into counters. He's taking his time. He's getting in range. And when he's in range and he sees the opportunity, then he's letting the punches go. Now, again, Ajagba gets in range. He lands 4 hard punches, and the referee stops the fight. And there you have it. Ajagba wins by knockout. And it was an exciting fight. Martin was brave, let's give him credit, but he could not nullify that backhand. Andre Ward made a really good observation. He said, I'm paraphrasing, basically in this context, it was the quality over the quantity, and the quality of Ajagba was very, very sufficient. And of course, this puts Ajagba back in the heavyweight division. I also want to make a side note here that the referee, I think, was brilliant. He had clear instructions, very, very clear instructions. He had very good communication, and he was very professional. Now, Ajagba, after a performance like that against Charles Martin, will be feared and probably will be avoided by most fighters. And I would say, to conclude this fight was in line with the Zuffa Boxing culture. It was a great knockout. Well, it was a stoppage, but it had excitement. And this is great matchmaking. And if you look at the three main fights that happened, you had the Afra Ajagba fight, which ended in round 4. You had the Umar versus Ahmed fight, which was a second round great knockout. And then you had the Jay Brio versus Abel. Apologies if I'm mispronouncing that. But again, that was a TKO round 3. So you had 3 fights and 3 stoppages. So clearly, the matchmaking is in line with their ethos. So it was good matchmaking, it was good entertaining fights, and very good finishes. And I was looking at the YouTube comment section, and it looked like, the feedback was good. So clearly Zuffa Boxing is building a brand as opposed to just building the boxers, because it's the platform, Zuffa Boxing, the culture that they're bringing. Now, at this time, we won't know the pay-per-view numbers. The YouTube numbers were solid for a new channel. The live gate will probably not be significant because the crowd size was probably in the hundreds. But again, the purpose is about building the brand, building the concept. And what we can say is that Zuffa Boxing is another lion in the boxing capitalist jungle. So that's the end of the video. Now I'm trying to build a digital boxing community. What does that mean? It means I'm interested in your comments, I'm interested in your questions, and I'm interested in your observations. Now, if you want to support the channel, all you have to do is like and subscribe. And if you want to watch more content, if you want to see more, just click here or click here. As always, thank you for your time. It is much appreciated. Peace.